Hey there, car enthusiasts. My name is Alex, and you are on the Classic Cars Roast channel. It's a miracle any of these are still on the road today. What a wild ride it must have been in 1965, cruising around in a car that screams luxury while also whispering, "Please don't break down." Today we're diving into the world of the 1965 Lincoln Continental, a car that many collectors seem to drool over, while I can't help but raise an eyebrow and question reality. This vehicle embodies the malaise-era in all its glory, where the glory days of high-compression V8 engines are but a distant memory. Remember 1970? That was the last great year for horsepower, and now here we are with a car that packs a pathetic 190 horsepower SAE net from a 7.6-to-1 compression ratio. Quite the downgrade, huh? The market situation for these beasts is a roller coaster. Prices have skyrocketed, reaching an absurd range of $50,000 to $100,000 at auctions, with some pristine examples pulling in numbers like $140,000. Why? Because it's a classic. But let me tell you, finding one in decent condition is like searching for a needle in a haystack. Most of these have been left to rust away, with common rust spots found on lower fenders, rear quarters, and the trunk floor. The electrical systems? Forget about it. The intricate wiring leads to frequent complications with window motors and switches. It's like a curse wrapped in chrome. First impressions? The exterior is undeniably striking with its large chrome bumpers and those iconic suicide doors that scream, "Look at me!" But when you peek inside, the charm quickly fades. The horizontal linear dashboard design with push-button controls feels more like a relic from a bygone era than a luxury feature. And power-adjustable bench seats? Sure, if you enjoy the thrill of a good power steering leak while trying to get the seat adjusted. So, what do you think about the brutal charm of this car? The way it stands out amidst a sea of blandness? Or is it just a heavy chunk of iron that'll drain your wallet faster than you can say transmission issues? Despite all its flaws, the big iron market is heating up, and if you find one with low mileage, like, say, a model that's only seen 3,900 miles, grab your checkbook. Just remember, it's only original once, so if you're going to bite the bullet, make sure it's a good one. All right, folks, let's dive deep into the creation story of the 1965 Lincoln Continental, shall we? Now, hold on to your seats because this is where we really start to see the malaise era creeping in like a bad odor. The Lincoln Continental was part of the fourth generation of this model, produced from 1961 to 1969, and it's the quintessential example of how America's luxury sedans were slowly losing their mojo. Back in the day, cars like this were the epitome of American luxury, big, bold, and brash. But by the time 1965 rolled around, the writing was on the wall. The glory days of high-compression V8s were fading fast, and manufacturers were starting to cut corners like they were in a race to the bottom. Now, let's talk about those iconic features that everyone loves to rave about. The suicide doors? Sure, they're a unique touch, but let's get real. These back hinge doors are just a gimmick to distract you from the fact that under the surface things were starting to get a bit shaky. The design was all about looking good while the performance was already beginning to take a nosedive. Gone were the days of powerful engines. Instead, you were left with a Lincoln that had a meek 7.6-to-1 compression ratio. That's right, folks. A pathetic 190 horsepower. I mean, can you imagine rolling up to a stoplight in this beast and feeling the embarrassment as it wheezes off the line? Sure, it had its charm, but that charm was starting to wear thin. The dashboard layout was all horizontal linear design, which sounds fancy until you realize how cluttered and dated it looks now. And don't even get me started on the electrical issues. Frequent complications with window motors and switches? That's just sad. Power steering leaks? Come on, Lincoln, you're better than this. The production quality began to reflect a broader trend in the industry. Manufacturers were more focused on cutting costs than on delivering the high-quality ride that American car enthusiasts craved. The build quality was pretty dreadful. Comically thick door seals trying to hide poor panel gaps. It's like they were trying to mask a bad haircut with a hat. Now, don't get me wrong. The Lincoln Continental still had some appeal, especially with its luxurious leather upholstery and spacious interior. But at the end of the day, it was a car caught in the crosshairs of an industry in decline. As we look back, it's crucial to remember that these vehicles were once symbols of status, but by the time 1965 rolled around, they were starting to feel more like relics of a bygone era. Would you really want to invest your hard-earned cash in a car that exemplifies the slow decline of American automotive greatness? I know I wouldn't. All right, folks, now it's time to dive into the exterior of the 1965 Lincoln Continental. Look at this beauty, or should I say this bloated chunk of chrome and steel. The colors offered are as luxurious as a velvet rope at a club, ranging from presidential black to embassy gold. But let's be real. Who's going to pull the trigger on a Sahara beige? That color screams, "I give up," before you even turn the key. The body lines on this car are about as smooth as a brick wall. The fourth-generation design is a mixed bag, with a silhouette that's undeniably iconic. Those rear-hinged suicide doors are a standout feature, and sure, they allow for a grand entrance, but they also give you that nagging feeling that you're about to get sucked out of the car every time you take a turn. It's a design quirk that begs the question, did they really think this through? Now let's talk about the grille. The revised grille on this model features a pronounced rectangular pattern that looks like it's trying too hard to be classy. But honestly, it's just a big slab of chrome that does nothing to enhance the overall look. It's like putting a tuxedo on a pig. Sure, it might look fancy, but at the end of the day, it's still a pig. The bumpers are another story. These massive chrome behemoths scream, "Look at me!" But it's a shame they're also a magnet for rust and dings. You can practically hear them groan under the weight of their own ambition. And speaking of ambition, the sheer size of this car is enough to make you question whether you're buying a vehicle or a small apartment. The body quirks don't stop there. With common rust spots lurking in the lower fenders, rear quarters, and even the trunk floor, you'd better hope your Continental has been pampered and not left to rot in the elements. The electrical issues with window motors and switches that seem to have been designed by someone who forgot what a circuit is add another layer of frustration. So what do you think? Is this a statement of opulence or just a grandiose failure wrapped in metal? For me, the exterior feels like a missed opportunity. A classic that's trying to hold on to its glory days, but is dragging a lot of baggage along with it. Would I buy it? Only if I had a place to store it far away from the elements and a team of mechanics on speed dial. Now turn your attention to the interior of the 1965 Lincoln Continental and strap in because we've got some serious ground to cover. First off, the dashboard layout is as horizontal as a politician's promise, wide, flat, and devoid of any real excitement. Push-button controls? Sure, they're there, but they feel like an afterthought rather than a statement. You want to feel like you're piloting a luxury cruiser, not fumbling around with a relic from a bygone era. The wood veneer accents are supposed to scream opulence, but let's face it, they can't hide the reality of what you're dealing with. You get a center-mounted dash clock that might as well be in a museum and multiple ashtray locations, because nothing says luxury like being able to ash your cigarette in a variety of spots. Now, don't get me started on the smell. You know that distinct scent of old leather and mildew? That's the aroma of neglect, my friends. If someone didn't treat this car right, you'll be left with a nose full of regret every time you slide into those bench seats. Speaking of seats, they offer power adjustment for the driver's side, thank goodness for small mercies, but the comfort level is about as soft as a brick. You're not going to be taking any long road trips without feeling like you've been through a wrestling match afterward. Let's talk about options, or the lack thereof. You won't find a plethora of customization here. It's as if the Lincoln designers thought, why bother? You get a deluxe steering wheel with a horn ring, and that's pretty much it. No fancy gadgets, no tech features to make you feel like you're in the 21st century. Just you, a hulking piece of vintage iron, and the distant memories of what luxury used to be. And don't even get me started on durability. Common rust spots are lurking in all the wrong places. Lower fenders, rear quarters, the bottom of doors. If you're lucky enough to find one without major rust issues, consider yourself a collector's golden child. Electrical problems? Oh, they're practically a rite of passage. Window motors and switches often fail due to complex wiring that feels more like a spaghetti mess than an engineering marvel. So, with all these flaws and compromises, you have to ask yourself, Is this really the kind of interior you want to be spending your time in? For me, it's a resounding no. If I'm going to sink my money into a classic, the interior needs to be as impressive as the car's exterior. Would you want to spend hours behind the wheel, fighting with a dashboard that feels like it was designed for a low-budget sci-fi movie? I didn't think so. All right, folks, buckle up because we're diving headfirst into the engine of the 1965 Lincoln Continental, and trust me, it's a wild ride. Now, the heart of this beast is the ML 430 cubic inch displacement engine. Yes, you heard that right, 430 cubic inches of what should be pure American muscle. But hold on to your hats, because while the numbers might sound impressive at first, they're about to take a nosedive into mediocrity. This engine boasts a peak horsepower of 320 gross horsepower. But wait, it gets worse. How about a pathetic 190 horsepower when measured by the more realistic SAE net standards? That's right, folks, we're talking about a compression ratio of just 7.6 to 1. For a car rolling out in the mid-60s, that's a disgrace. Torque? Well, at least that has some muscle behind it, cranking out 465 pound-feet. But let's be real, this is a luxury cruiser, not a race car. This engine is designed to waft you down the boulevard rather than rocket you off the line. And if you think this powertrain is going to give you that thrilling experience, think again. It takes about 10.5 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour, which feels like an eternity when you're behind the wheel. That's not exactly what I'd call exhilarating, is it? Now let's chat about the transmission because it's a sacred cow in the automotive world. The Lincoln turbodrive automatic transmission, while a step above the more common Ford C6 from that era, still leaves a lot to be desired. This isn't the glorious turbo hydromatic 400 that we all know and love. It's more like a lazy uncle who just can't keep up with the family. The shifts are sluggish, and you'll feel every ounce of that weight when you're trying to make a quick getaway from a stoplight. But what about the overall engineering? Sure, the MEL engine has its dedicated fans, but for me, the lack of real power and the heavy, lumbering feeling of this car just doesn't cut it. The handling? Forget it. It used to be better back when cars had that raw, unfiltered connection to the road. These days, it feels like driving a barge instead of a classic luxury car. So, what's the takeaway here? The engine of the 1965 Lincoln Continental is a mixed bag. It's got some charm, sure, but with such low horsepower and a transmission that struggles to keep up, it's hard to see this as a true classic in the performance department. For me, unless you're a die-hard fan of that big iron aesthetic, you might want to think twice before shelling out your hard-earned cash for this one. All right, folks, it's time to dive into the mechanics of the 1965 Lincoln Continental, and believe me, this is where the rubber meets the road, or in this case, where the confusion meets the chaos. First up, the transmission. Now brace yourselves because this is a sacred cow we're about to dissect. The Lincoln turbodrive automatic transmission in this beauty is the best automatic transmission ever built. Yes, you heard me right. It's smooth, it's robust, and it actually gets the job done without the drama. You see, the Turbo Hydromatic 400, which was a game changer, set the bar high, and while the Lincoln turbodrive might not quite reach those heights, it's still a solid performer. Now let's not kid ourselves, the C6 that came later was a decent enough unit, but when you put it next to the turbodrive, it's like comparing a full-bodied Cabernet with cheap box wine. Now let's talk about the rear axle. Typically, you're looking at a 3.0 to 1 axle ratio here, which is about as thrilling as watching paint dry. Sure, it's functional, but it's not exactly what I'd call exhilarating. This car was meant to be a statement on the road, yet with that axle ratio, it feels more like your great-aunt's Sunday drive. A 0 to 60 miles per hour time of approximately 10.5 seconds? That's just embarrassing. You could practically walk alongside it. And let's not even mention the quarter-mile time of 18.2 seconds at 75 miles per hour. It's like this car is saying, hey, I'm not in a hurry. Now, don't get me wrong, the Lincoln Continental was built to cruise, not race. But with that kind of performance, it's hard not to feel let down. The mechanical weak points are just as concerning. Automatic transmission issues and power steering leaks are practically a rite of passage for these cars, and if you're looking at one, you'd better be prepared to roll up your sleeves and dive into some serious repairs. So, here's the reality check. While the turbo drive has its moments, the overall mechanical execution leaves a lot to be desired. The handling? It used to be better, much better. Remember, cars from the mid-60s to early 70s could actually take a corner without throwing you into the next county. What do you think? Are you ready to forgive these mechanical missteps for the sake of that brutal charm? When it comes to the suspension, brakes, and overall handling feel of the 1965 Lincoln Continental, we're diving into a classic case of what were they thinking? Sure, the car's got that big, bold presence and the iconic suicide doors that scream luxury, but let's be real. The driving experience can be downright painful. The suspension setup is a classic coil spring arrangement in the front and a leaf spring design in the rear. Now, this may sound fine on paper, but it's not translating well to the road. You would expect a car of this size and stature to float like a cloud, but instead, it often feels like you're driving a boat through choppy waters. The ride quality is all over the place, and it can be an absolute nightmare over rough surfaces. Now, let's talk about the brakes. The Continental features a drum brake system, which, in the context of the mid-60s, isn't the worst thing ever, unless you consider how heavy this beast is. With a curb weight that can easily tip the scales over 4,000 pounds, you're going to want some serious stopping power. But what you're getting instead is a soft pedal feel that makes you question if you're actually slowing down or just preparing for that inevitable crash. For me, a car that can't stop on command is an immediate deal breaker. If I'm barreling down the highway, I need to know the brakes will actually bring this monster to a halt without requiring a prayer and a sacrifice to the automotive gods. And handling? Don't even get me started. Any semblance of sporty dynamics is utterly obliterated by the sheer mass of this vehicle. The steering is vague, and the body roll is so pronounced that you might as well be piloting a yacht. The truth is, cars from the mid-60s handled so much better than what we see in later models. You could actually feel the road, and the steering was responsive enough to make you feel alive. But the Lincoln? It's like trying to wrestle a giant marshmallow as it lumbers down the street. So, is this suspension and braking setup a reflection of the malaise that would soon grip the auto industry? Absolutely. The decline in engineering quality is evident, and it's a painful reality to face. If I were in the market, I'd be looking for something with a little more bite and a lot less fluff. Would I buy this for the handling? Not a chance. What about you? Would you put up with this level of discomfort for the sake of owning a classic? Now, let's talk about reliability. Because if you're considering a classic like the 1965 Lincoln Continental, you'd better brace yourself. This car is notorious for its rust problems, especially in the lower fenders, rear quarters, and even the trunk floor. If you're not careful, you'll find yourself knee-deep in rot before you even get the chance to enjoy that glorious ride. And don't even get me started on the electrical issues. The window motors and switches are practically begging for a complete rewiring after 50-plus years of neglect. For me, a car that requires constant attention to simple electrical components is a massive red flag. Mechanical reliability? Well, that's another can of worms. The automatic transmissions are known to cause headaches, and the power steering leaks like a sieve. Seriously, if you're not prepared to get your hands dirty, this might not be the classic car for you. You'll want to have a solid mechanic on speed dial because this beauty is going to need some TLC. So, what's the verdict? The 1965 Lincoln Continental has that brutal charm, that unapologetic character that makes you feel like a king behind the wheel. But the reality is, it's a double-edged sword. It's a car that demands respect, patience, and a bit of cash to keep it running smoothly. If you find one in decent condition, it's worth considering as part of your collection, but only if you're prepared for the commitment. Would I buy one? Honestly, if I could find a well-preserved example for a good price, I might just pull the trigger. But remember, it's only original once, and if you're looking at a repainted body or a rust bucket, it's an immediate no for me. At the end of the day, the 1965 Lincoln Continental is a piece of history, but it's also a project that could either reward you or ruin your wallet. Now, would you spend your money on this classic? If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Leave your comments and impressions. Your opinion is very important to me. Until next time.